this morning, I think you all have received your letter. We're going to do a walk on the West Highland Way, and we're really pleased to have Nicki back with us. You remember that Nicki's done a couple of other talks for us. She did one on the Olympics. The last one she did was on the Paralympics, which was great. And so thank you very much, Nicki, for coming back and doing another talk for us. I know that, I guess a lot of you might have done this walk. I know that we had a talk on West Highland Way in December 2017 by Wendy Martin. And Wendy, I think, is joining us this morning. And so do please share your experiences, use the chat box, and that would be great. So welcome to everyone. Welcome to those of you joining on YouTube. And okay, over to you, Nicki. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Either you're desperate or I can't have been too bad the previous two times when I did my talks, but anyway, I hope you enjoy this one. This is about a walk on the West Highland Way that we did in 2014. It was another walk in aid of LOROS, and following on from coast to coast, which I talked about in one of my previous talks. So it is 7 odd years ago, and I can't say I remember every detail. So I'm hoping that Wendy, who I think has done it more recently than I have, if I have gaps, perhaps we'll be able to fill in the gaps. So this was the West Highland Way, 2014. It's 95 miles. It goes from, now I've almost forgotten how to pronounce this, but I know you don't say Milngavie. I think you say something like Mulgai to Fort William in Scotland. So it's from quite near Glasgow to up to Fort William. And that gives you an idea of the route. So I think I can work here with my cursor. So you'll see a Mulgai here. I think I'm right in saying that Glasgow is down about here. And you'll see that it goes up past the distillery, of which more anon, up along, this is Loch Lomond. So it goes all along the east side of Loch Lomond. You see that there's actually the road, the main road, if you go up there to see Loch Lomond, is on the west side. And there's not really a road on most of this side. So we were walking along a path on this side of Loch Lomond, up to the end of Loch Lomond, and then here up to Crean Larich, and then up through this valley and on to Rannoch Moor. And across there's a ski area there on Rannoch Moor, all very bleak up here. And you end up at, I can't see this, but I don't know if you can. It tells me I'm screen sharing at this point. But anyway, Fort William is about where my screen is saying that I'm screen sharing, and perhaps you can see that it says Fort William there, just near Ben Nevis. Okay, I found it a bit like the coast to coast in that the first half was beautiful, but you knew it was going to be beautiful. Like on the coast to coast, you know you're going to be going through the Lake District, or here you know you're going to be going past Loch Lomond, and it's very beautiful. But this sounds dreadful, but it's as you expect it to be. It's absolutely gorgeous. Particularly, we were lucky to have pretty good weather for most of the time, so it really was beautiful. But I actually found the second half, which was bleaker and wilder and less trodden, really. More attractive than the first half, really. A bit like I say, when you do the coast to coast, you have the Lake District, but then you cross over onto the into the Dales and then onto the North York Moor, which is very bleak for the last couple of days, especially if you have the most dreadful weather that they've ever had on the coast to coast, like I did. So very, yeah, very beautiful, very scenic the first half, and then really quite wild and a bit more desolate the second half. Most of the track is quite hard underfoot, actually. My feet did hurt on this walk, which they don't long walks. I think because quite a lot of it was on track where you couldn't walk at the side of the track. Normally, if I have a track, I like to walk on the grass at the side, and I find walking on grass, my feet don't get so sore. But quite often here, that just wasn't possible to walk on any grass at the side of the tracks, particularly through this second stretch here. And so my feet actually got quite sore funny enough, when I'm running, it's the other way around. I find if I run on grass, then I find that really hard work and my feet and my body ache. But if I run on, I don't know, I've been lucky to get away with it, but I run on road or pavements and I don't get any troubles. But here it was the other way around. So it was hard work, I think, underfoot, very hard underfoot. And this stretch here, particularly from about here along the side of Loch Lomond, was scrabbling up and down and up and down and over a lot of tree roots and so on. And so that was really quite tough going as well. And from about here, you just kept thinking, when's this Loch Lomond going to end? You just went on, and you could keep seeing, you could see what you presumed was the end of Loch Lomond, but it felt like you weren't getting any nearer to Loch Lomond. So quite hard going along here as well. And in fact, one of our group did actually slip down off the path and fell down about 6 foot actually into a hole. And she was one who was there with her husband, and he we thought it was very gallant of him. He leapt down after her to rescue her from this hole, but he said he only leapt down because she got his wallet, and he didn't want to lose his wallet when she was down in this hole. Anyway, okay, so it's say 95 miles. And we divided this up into 7 days walking. We drove up on what was actually Good Friday, 2014. Going up to Glasgow, it's a long haul to get up there. And we didn't start walking until the Saturday. So we were walking from Easter Saturday through to the following Friday. Our accommodation, we spent 3 nights in a what's called a bunkhouse, which was round about here, I think. I think this is Bal Mahar. We'll say a bit more about that as well later on. So we stayed there for 3 nights. Then we stayed in the youth hostel in Crean Larrick for a couple of nights. And then at the end, we stayed in, luxury, in a Premier Inn in Fort William. Supposed to be for 3 nights. I think this is right, if my maths is right, but only 2 in the end. And I'll tell you why that was. As with all the LOROS trips, we paid for our own travel and accommodation and food. We've got, I'm getting an echo now. And because some people in the group, to be honest, were not particularly well off, agreed to do self-catering. So and it was easy to do so in the bunkhouse and in the youth hostel. So we were able to do self-catering. A member of a chap who'd been in a coast-to-coast walk group previously, who was a chef, kindly prepared some big trays of, lasagna and curry and stuff for us, which kept us going for some of the nights. And then other nights we cooked things like pasta sauce and cooked pasta up and so on. So, so it was enjoyable actually, sort of getting together and cooking the food. We were asked to raise at least £750, and in the end I managed to raise just over £1,200. I'm not actually sure how many the group as a whole got, but I would think it would be, there were 12 of us, 11 of us walking, of whom 9 would be fundraising. So I would think that we would have got at least £9,000 probably. I'll tell you a bit more about the group when we get there. Anyway, so this is the route up in Scotland. I say here, this Mulgai on the outskirts of Glasgow. Actually, come to think of it, this is Glasgow here, isn't it? I think this is the outskirts of Glasgow. Sorry, didn't mean to turn quite yet. And up here through, say, along Loch Lomond, up through Rannoch Moor and up to Loch Lomond, which is overlooked by Ben Nevis. Okay, you've got the mileage there actually. Okay. So this is when we were at LOROS on the Good Friday. That's my friend Jean, who I think I've done all the LOROS walks that I've done, bar one, I've done with her. I think I might have mentioned that we sort of hit it off on the coast to coast because we were the two who didn't like going to bed at 9 o'clock at night and enjoyed a gin and tonic or two in the evenings. So we sort of struck up quite a friendship on the coast to coast. And we've actually done quite a few walks, just the two of us since then as well. So most years now, as well as doing a LOROS walk, if there is one, of course, there haven't been any for well over a year now. We've done other walks such as the Dales Way and the South Downs Way. And actually last September, we did the National Forest Way close to home. which was very enjoyable, very interesting. Anyway, so there's Jean. She and we're very compatible for walking. We walk about the same pace. We've got about the same amount of stamina, and we don't mind spending some money on food and gin and tonic and wine in the evening, and nice bed and breakfast places to stay. But there we are, about to set off. I'm always amazed by how tall I look, but anyway, there we go. So we were packed up. So we met up at LOROS on the Friday morning, packed up the van. There's one van to take all of us. The person here getting into or out of, or whatever the van was, the chap who was our driver for the trip, Mike. He is actually a walker as well, but he offered, and it was agreed that he was going to drive the van for this trip. I mean, the advantage to having the van is, of course, that we can take all our stuff up, that we can be ferried between accommodations, so we don't actually have to carry our big bags at all. And quite often the van will, even when we're not moving on accommodation, the van will suddenly appear sort of part way through the morning or part way through the afternoon, if where we are is accessible by road, and we can have a brew up and a bit of cake. There's a big tradition of having masses and masses of cake on these walks. Everybody makes far too much cake, and then obviously you just have to get through it, don't you? So there he is loading up the van, and we're getting ready to get in there. So this is then the first day, having got up to Balmahar and checked into the bunkhouse and spent the first night at the bunkhouse. We were then driven back down to Mulgai to start the walk, and you can see there is an official West Highland Way start point, and that was where we all assembled. And Mike, the driver, took the photo. So you can see that there were actually 11 of us walking in the group. This is Adrian Walker, who joined me for when we did the talk about the coast to coast. He's a walker, which is very apt, obviously. He's now just left LOROS. He took voluntary redundancy, but he's still doing a lot for LOROS, and he'll still organise the walks for LOROS. So it's very apt that he's called a walker of LOROS, and he organises these walks extremely well. And this is his right-hand man, Tony, who has been on all the walks I've been on. He's ex-army, and just the sort of person that you would really want to have around if there was ever any emergency. I would trust him, in any situation to sort us out. I think I told you that on the coast to coast walk, I've only ever seen him flummoxed once, where he just couldn't find a safe way or an unboggy way back down off 9 standards rig, but otherwise I would trust him with my life, literally would trust him with my life. And he's always the one who's reading the maps, and he and Adrian carry these huge rucksacks, which include thermos flasks and milk and coffee and tea and stuff. So they're carrying about 3 or 4 times the weight that the rest of us are carrying with our little day packs. And that means we can stop and have tea and coffee sort of as we go along. And they keep us going, and they make us stop and have a rest at certain points, and then they get us going again. And Adrian is absolutely meticulous in the organisation that he carries out for these walks. And always, he is the most tolerant and enthusiastic and unflappable person I think I've ever met. I've only seen him lose his rag once. He's very, very patient. I think sometimes when I would have really lost my rag and been tempted to be very sarcastic with people who are being pathetic or stupid, he just carries on being very generous and very kind. And then you can see that in the actual group, there was one chap here, Dave, who's done most of the walks and who goes doing lots of the recce's with Adrian and Tony when they're going to do a new route. And his wife, Sue, here on the left, goes with them as well. So Dave and Janet, have been on most of the walks as well that I've been on. And then, as it happens, all the rest of the ladies, including Jean, these ladies here, and Laurie there, and myself and Penny here, we've all, I knew all of them already, and I had walked with all of them already at some point. I think I've mentioned before that Adrian normally here organises regular walks. It's really like being in a walking group, in a walking club. And he organises regularly what we call training walks, and anybody can join in. Even if you're not training for a particular walk, you can join in. and he tries to make sure that anybody who's going to do one of his walks is fit enough to do it, and that they realise that they've got to, if they're not fit enough, that they've got to get fit. His favourite thing is hills. So he has us quite often in Bradgate Park, we'll go up a hill and come down again. And then he says, right, well, we'll go up again now. So we go up again and then we come down again. And we might even go up a third time just for the sake of going up and down a hill and getting fitter. So you can see the first day was really quite sunny and really nice, promised well, bode well for the week. And we set off for Mulgai in the morning. It's very well signposted, the route. There's a symbol which they use, this symbol with the thistle on, to indicate the West Highland Way. And the first day, quite a long day, 13 miles. And you can see it goes from Mulgai past various sort of sites, including this distillery, and up to a place called Drimmen, which is still short of Balmahar. So once we got to there, we had to then get, I think there was a pub or a cafe, a cafe, and then we got a lift up to Balmahar from the end of the day's walk. Okay, so I say very good information and very helpful. There you are, you can see as well sort of the signs that you get all the way along the West Highland Way. I'm not sure if Khyber Pass is a joke or not, to be honest. I'm not sure I've noticed that before. And then back to, so this is when we're just 2 miles into the walk. Some lovely names, of course. Drumclog Moor sounds like a rather good place. But you can see, lovely sunny day. This looks a bit like a golf course, doesn't it, in the background? Yes, here we go, a golf, somebody playing golf by a river. Excellent signage, as I've said there. And that's the sort of view that we were getting on the first day. So the mountains there are called the Campsie Mountains. And although it was April, there was still a bit of snow you can just see on the top of there. Oh, I should have mentioned, we chose April, or April was chosen for us by Adrian, because at that time of year, you still should be able to avoid the midges. From about May onwards till September, the midges can be really dreadful in this part of Scotland. And I've seen pictures of people walking the West Highland Way later on in the year with covered in netting and trying to be protected against the midges. Actually, even when we were walking, we did see people doing that, which I thought was unnecessary. I wasn't aware, I must say, of any midges, but perhaps Wendy, you'll be able to tell us what time of year you did it and whether you avoided the midges. But there you are, you can see, you know, not all that much vegetation in the foreground, and the mountains, the snow-covered mountains in the background. And there we go, this is the sort of track that we were walking on that day. As you can see, as I said, you could just about walk on the grass at the side there in this sort of stretch of it, but wasn't always the case. And I think you can see that the surface is really hard and quite rough, and quite a lot of stones in the track. So, you know, your feet could really get quite sore walking on that for any stretch of time. Yeah, it looks like Janet's decided to try and walk on the grass at the side. I've no idea why Tony's walking the other way, away from us, but he must have had some reason. Perhaps he's going back to fetch whoever this is, I'm not sure. Anyway, he's walking the wrong way. But you can see it was quite warm. You know, we only had light clothing, light tops on that first day. It was lovely. And this is where we stopped for lunch at a pub, the Beech Tree, on the first day. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes to read this lovely poem, if you can call it a poem, about what they had to offer. I won't try and read it with a Scottish accent. So you can see it was about halfway on the first day, because it was at 7 miles out of 13. Okay, so it finishes with keep that smile on your face. Fort Bill is the place, so Fort William is the place. It's only another, I presume this says 87 miles. I don't know if you can see it on your version, but I can't quite see the bottom line, but it's only another 87 miles. So 7 miles down, 87 miles to go. And you can see there's the LOROS van actually. So Mike had joined us there and brought us tea, stuff to make tea and coffee halfway through the day. Okay, so then this is the bunkhouse in Balmaha. So it's right on the banks of Loch Lomond. That was the view from the bunkhouse, so just across the road and out over Loch Lomond. There's a pub nearby, and then there's this sort of little marina, little jetty and boats. So it's it was very small. It just about served its purpose. We could all fit in there, all 12 of us. I think we had, boys upstairs and girls downstairs, or vice versa, from what I remember. There was quite a sizable kitchen and good equipment and sort of living area and so on. So that was quite good. There was, it was largely bunk beds, hence the name bunkhouse, I suppose. So most of us sleeping in bunk beds, although there were a couple of proper bedrooms, if you like, with proper beds. But we always let the leaders have first options on any sort of more decent sleeping accommodation. The only problem was that, yes, there were 2 bathrooms. There was one upstairs and there was one downstairs, but the bathroom had the shower. I don't think they had a bath, but anyway, there was a shower and a wash basin and the toilet in the bathroom. So if one person was in there having a shower, it meant nobody else could be having a wash in the wash basin or even going to the toilet unless you were very good friends with them. So I thought that was really sort of not really very well thought through. It would have been much better if there'd been separate toilets, at least from the shower and the wash basin, or perhaps a toilet with a wash basin. Then more of us could have, because when you get 12 people at the end of the day who all want to have a shower and all want to get washed and freshened up after walking 13 miles, it's not particularly helpful if you've got to wait even to go to the toilet. But anyway, as you can see here, welcome to the Balmaha bunkhouse and canoe hire. But we stayed there for, as I said, 3 nights and were ferried backwards and forwards to this bunkhouse. And lovely view, lovely sunshine, lovely day. Oh, sorry, I didn't mention, right, so the first day, yes, we didn't just go past that brewery that was mentioned on the map. Here we go. The Glengoyne distillery, which was before lunchtime, so we didn't want to indulge too much, but you could have a guided tour of the distillery and you could have a sample and you could sit and have a cup of coffee and so on as well. So that was an enjoyable little interlude on the first day. To be honest, I don't remember the rest of these things which are shown here, Mugdock Castle and the Loch, and even these standing stones, but perhaps I was so intent on walking. But I do remember the distillery, although and there were great big barrels piled up, and it was obviously quite a major tourist attraction. I have to say, whiskey is not my thing anyway, so, but I did have a little taste whilst we were there. Right. The second day we started, so we were driven back to Drimmen, so back south from Balmaha to Drimmen, and then we walked from Drimmen back to where we'd started from in the van to Balmaha, and then on along the bank of Loch Lomond, the east bank of Loch Lomond, to a place called Roadennan, where there was a hotel where we could have a drink at the end of the day. Drinks are sitting out on their terrace. So me being me, I said, oh, well, that's good. If we're going to come to Balmaha round about lunchtime, halfway through the day, we don't need to take our lunch with us. We can just have it when we get back, when we get to Balmaha in the middle of the day. Oh, no, says Adrian, no, you've got to carry it with you and everything, because you never know what might happen and you might get stranded and blah, blah. So anyway, he's always like that. So anyway, we still had to carry our stuff from Drimmen, I say, to Balmaha to Roadennan. And again, really nice weather. You can see some people in just sort of lightish tops, clear weather, no rain that day. And there we are all lined up to go. And the major sort of landmark of this second morning, so this would have been Easter Sunday morning, actually, yeah, Easter Sunday, was to go up, not past, but you can see the path here, up to the top of and round and over this conic hill. I did, mugging up last night, I read that Conic Hill is nothing apparently to do with the shape of it. And there was a rumour that at one point there was a theory that it was named after somebody whose name was something like McConnon, and it got corrupted into Conic Hill. But apparently the real reason is that conic, or there's a Gaelic word which means mud, actually, or bog, and it gets its name from that. Anyway, again, you can see here the path. I mean, it's quite wide and quite easily walkable, but, you know, quite a hard surface, quite tough underfoot, and not that easy on grass. And the grass wouldn't be very soft anyway at the side of the track, but quite, you know, easy walking. And although this is obviously steeply uphill, not difficult to find your way up Conic Hill. I have no idea what river that was, but as you can see, just a rather attractive, sunny spot by the river. Looks like we were crossing the river, doesn't it? And then once we got to Conic Hill, that was the beautiful view from the top down over Loch Lomond. So you can see the sun was out, the sky was blue, Loch Lomond was blue. We were into t-shirts by then. It was really quite warm having gone up. You can see the little boats here on Loch Lomond. So then you go back down again and along the shores of Loch Lomond. And that's looking further up, towards further right and up towards the north. So the end of Loch Lomond is up this way. You can just see a tiny bit of snow still there on the top of those mountains. And this is, well, our group coming down. So there's Adrian. Not the most flattering picture of him I've ever taken, I have to say. And this is a lady called Lorraine. So we were coming down, and this couple here are actually going up. And you can see that actually the path here is quite rough, quite, you have to pick your way down or up. Steps there in the stone. But, you know, quite rough, quite hard going down or up, really, and just very dry vegetation. I can't remember particularly whether it had been a particularly dry year, but really the vegetation looks very dry, doesn't it, for April? So that was, those are the pictures that I've got of the second day. So if we go back to the map quickly. So we'd gone from Mulgai to Drimmen, which must be, oh, it's not shown, yeah, here, sorry. So Drimmen, that was the first day. And this second day, Drimmen to Roardennen, sort of on the, about, if you can say halfway along, I suppose, Loch Lomond. And this is Balmahar, where we were staying. So once we got to Roardennen and stopped and had a drink in the pub there, we then got in the minibus and were taken back to Balmahar, to the bunkhouse, for our third night. Yeah, third night in the bunkhouse. And then the next day we moved on to the van took all our stuff along to Crean Larrick. They say that what goes on tour, what happens on tour stays on tour, but I won't tell you who it was. A story about one of the girls in the group. She's always a bit disorganized and batty, and there's many funny stories about her, but on this one, we on the first day when we were driving up to Glasgow, she said, I won't point at her, but it wasn't me. She said, oh, I've forgotten my mobile phone. I've left it on charge at home. It's still charging at home. So, you know, we said, well, that's not too bad. I'm sure we can manage, and you can borrow a phone or whatever, that'll be fine. Then she said, oh, I've forgotten my heart medication that I'm supposed to take every day. So we said, well, that's not so good, is it really? So we think, what can we do about it? Well, she could ring her son to go in to get her heart medication, except of course she hadn't got her mobile phone, and because she hadn't got her mobile phone, she hadn't got her son's number to ring for him to go and break into her house and get her heart medication. Anyway, in the end, she managed to contact her son using somebody else's phone. I can't remember exactly how we managed to track down his number. He went into her house, got some of her, well, they weren't tablets, they were capsules, those sort of, capsules, and posted it to Korean Larrick Youth Hostel, which seemed like a good idea because we, by the time he'd posted it was sorted and he posted it, then we would be at Korean Larrick Youth Hostel. Anyway, this envelope turned up, thank goodness, the last day that we were at Korean Larrick Youth Hostel. Well, I was going to say thank goodness, because I thought it was in the end going to arrive when we'd already moved on from Korean Larrick Youth Hostel. But her son had put her capsules in an ordinary paper envelope. And so the capsules have been smashed to pieces going through the post office sorting system. And when she opened the envelope, it was just full of powder. So she still couldn't take this medication. Oh dear. So in the end, she had to go to a chemist and beg for some of this medication. But oh dear, the stories are endless about this particular lady. I know, it's always good for a laugh. She was also struggling with her boots because her boots were not the most expensive and not the most comfortable. And every time we stopped for a coffee or a tea break or whatever, she would take her boots off because they were hurting her so much all the time. It's very sad, but also good, keeps us amused anyway, I have to say. Okay, so day 3, we were ferried back to Roadennen to start walking, and then we carried on along the east bank of Loch Lomond and onto a place called Inveranen. So this was really all along still the eastern bank of Loch Lomond. And so luckily the scenery was absolutely gorgeous because the walking, as I mentioned at the beginning, was really quite difficult and quite rough and quite up and down, and lots of roots and sort of rough bits and holes in the path and so on. I honestly can't remember. Wendy might be able to help afterwards what this was a memorial to. It's something to do with a gun, because this is like the site of a gun, but I honestly can't, and perhaps it's a particular division in the army or something, or rifles or division or something like that. But anyway, but it's a beautiful memorial, and you can see it's sort of cleverly placed so that you get a view through and a view up to the north end of Loch Lomond. Very attractive. I've just written down memorial, so I don't know what that was a memorial to. Very sorry. So this is Easter Monday that we're walking now. This is a typical stop for coffee or tea or lunch. So we all sort of hunker down, and I think it must have been a snack thing. But this is, I mentioned that Tony and Adrian carry these thermos flasks and stuff with them. And Tony carries these plastic cups in various colours, and we all sort of muck in and help carry around the coffee or the tea around the group, and people dish out cake and so on. So there we are having one of our coffee breaks. It's very, very noble of them to carry all this heavy stuff. I mean, I've tried just picking up Adrian's rucksack, and I wouldn't like to carry it at all, never mind for the whole day with all this stuff in. It's very good of them. Because this is more scenery across Loch Lomond. Get an idea of quite up and down. Signed to Rob Roy's cave. This was Rob Roy country. Apparently Rob Roy, before he became an outlaw, and I don't know honestly whether he was a goodie or a baddie, but he was a local landowner, but somebody basically nicked all his money, tricked him out of a lot of his money, so he became an outlaw, and sort of this was the area that he would operate in. More views going along, say east side of Loch Lomond. Still quite rough path, as you can see, although not sort of so covered as it was before, but beautiful, and a beautiful day, beautifully sunny, snow on the top. Getting nearer the end of the day, but we're still going along the east side of Loch Lomond. Beautiful day. And then that's the start of day 4. So I'll stop here and we'll have a break there, shall we? So we're now on to Tuesday, the 22nd of April, 2014, and we're going to go from Inverarnon. I'll show you it back in a minute. This pub, it's 41 miles in, so we're not quite halfway. Up as far, so Inverarnon, up as through Crian Larrick, where the youth hostel is, where we're actually going to be staying for a couple of nights, where we are staying for a couple of nights, through Tindrum, and just a bit further on, we were a bit naughty with the pickup point was on a private estate, the Auk estate, AUCH, or Auch, it will be in German anyway. And so we were picked up there. Adrian had tried to get official permission from the owners of the estate, but not had any response. So it was slightly risky that the minibus just had to come onto this estate to pick us up. But we got away with it, or they didn't object or whatever. So we need to go back to, as I said, the clue is in the clothing. The weather really had broken. It was a very, very wet day that day, the 16 miles. And consequently, there's only a couple of photos. This is one of them, because it was too horrible and wet to bother taking your camera out. So the only picture for that day is going through the woods. You can see we've all got wet weather gear on, and you can always tell if you've got the waterproof covers over the rucksacks that it must be wet. Again, you can see, hard track underfoot, no space really to walk at the side. Lots of pictures, lovely views down over a loch which I can't remember the name of. I'm sure I could have checked, but sorry, I haven't. But you can see it's quite misty and overcast. Beautiful rock formations in the river. Plenty of snow still, even though it's April. Getting quite boggy and quite peaty, and I say going across the moor. And then we get a nice place to get to at the end. So this is, as I said, the King's House Hotel. It's really the only place to stay in this area. If you want to stay in the sort of Rannoch Moor area, it's the only accommodation, as far as I know, that you're able to stay in, and they do cater for walkers quite a bit. So we decided we weren't actually staying there, but we did have our dinner there that night. And this beautiful stag was out the front of the hotel when we got there, and Mike, our driver, approached the stag, and the stag was quite interested in his apple, as you can see. Obviously quite tame, used to people being there. So that was day 5. So that was the Wednesday, the 23rd, that we were walking across the moor. And then on the Thursday, we were ferried back to King's House Hotel. And the sun had come out again, and it was, well, some people thought it was warm. Tony obviously thought it was warm. He's just in his shirt sleeves. Some of us were in sort of warmer clothing still. I've still got my heavy jacket on, waterproof jacket on. And it was a short day, only 8 miles to Kinlochleven, so or Kinlochleven. So quite an easy day really, except, as we will see, that's the hotel. It's a very nice place. And nearby this very well-known mountain, Storgdirg, I think you pronounce it. And again, I'm sorry, I should have looked what it means. I think it's black something or other, but I've forgotten. Should have checked up. But that's a sort of really iconic mountain in that area. Showing we're still on the right track. Good signage still. Very easy to follow. Adrian. You can see road in the background, so we're walking not that far from the road. So to start with, it was quite level across all this sort of rather marshy, sort of boggy ground. You can see here in the foreground quite a bit of water there in the ground. But then we came to what's called the Devil's Staircase, which was quite a steep incline. You can see, and it's in zigzags going up. So this is people going up, different members of the group at different stages of the zigzag going up the Devil's Staircase. and it was tough going, I must say. And again, you can see quite pebbly, stony underfoot, so not easy, not an easy climb. But we were rewarded with a beautiful view of, I don't think I've ever been above a rainbow before, but you looked down into the valley, and presumably, you know, effect of river down there and moisture down in the valley. And so we were looking down over a rainbow from above. And then quite early in the afternoon, we arrived at Kinlochleven, and our driver, Mike, was there ready, waiting for us. So he'd gone down by the river, waiting for us to arrive and to ferry us back to Crean Larrick Youth Hostel. Or that might have been the day we moved on to Fort William, actually, I think, yeah. So that was quite a nice, relaxed day. So the final day of walking was from Kinlochleven to Fort William. And we're still on the right track. Hope I didn't go south because I would have gone wrong. But again, you can see good signs, but good 14 miles on the last day, and quite a lot of going up and down, quite a lot of undulating track on the last day. And judging by my gloves, it must have been, and jacket and so on, certainly cold when we started anyway. I did use trekking poles some of the time. I have to say nowadays, generally, if I'm walking fairly level ground, I don't really use my trekking poles, which I did use on the coast to coast. But I think if it's going to be undulating, which it was, well, they say undulating, up and downhill, which it was going to be this day, then I do find that the trekking poles are helpful for helping you keep your balance and take some of your weight. So quite open ground. We were looking out for our first sight of Ben Nevis, because then we knew we'd be getting near the end, and we knew we'd be getting near Fort William. You can see there's still this hard track, hard surface. But when Ben Nevis did come in sight, it didn't. Well, not all of it did anyway. This is Ben Nevis, but it was covered in cloud. Well, the top of it was in cloud. So we didn't get a clear view of Ben Nevis, and it was also covered in snow at the top at that time of the year that year. But you can see the group sort of heading in that direction. And then we had to come clambering down from the moor down onto down towards Fort William. Again, quite a steep, sort of, I suppose the reverse of the Devil's Staircase almost, but quite a steep decline. They'd changed, these signs were quite new, they'd changed the route fairly recently. So this was a new part of the route. In fact, it says here diversion, but it was a new part of the West Highland Way. It's coming down. This was another chap who joined us for the last couple of days. He's another of the regular LOROS walkers, and he came up and joined us for the last 2 or 3 nights. And there we are down in Fort William. This is actually where the West Highland Way originally ended, used to end. And it's just outside the Ben Nevis, the woolen mill. And you can go in there and get a certificate. I've got a range of certificates done, but mostly produced by Adrian. We got one for completing the walk and one to say thank you for the money that we'd raised. I think he did go and collect certificates from the woolen mill, but you can see that we're mostly still smiling, having got there. But actually nowadays the official finish is not here, but it's further into Fort William, which they've done presumably to encourage people to go into Fort William and, you know, go in the cafes and spend money in Fort William. So you go into actually into Fort William. And this project was part financed by the Scottish Government and the European Community Highland Leader. I won't say anything more about that, but anyway. So that's the picture that you had, I think, on the publicity for today. That's all of us. There's this, I'm sure everybody has done this and sat by this chap and put a LOROS, well, we put a LOROS cap on him, but you can see there that the whole group were celebrating having finished, including Mike, the driver, who was with us, with some bubbly. we all made it. And as I say, I'm not totally sure of the total sum that we raised, but it will be at least, I would have thought, £9,000, possibly more. Must have been reasonably warm by then. We've managed to get our jackets and so on off. And that's the end of the slides. The postscript is that, so we stayed that night, we had a meal at the Premier Inn, and the plan was that the next day, those who wanted to could go up Ben Nevis. Well, I'd been up Ben Nevis the year before, and it was one of the most boring things I have ever done in my life. And I swore that I would never go up Ben Nevis, well, probably ever again, or certainly not within the next 20 years anyway. I don't know if any of you have done it, but it is the most boring walk. It's just exactly the same gradient the whole way up. It's just slog, 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 slog. You don't really see very much from the top. There's people around who are just wearing ordinary sandals and ordinary clothing, and particularly big groups of Spanish people who seem to think it's just a walk that you can do, an ordinary walk. Anyway, and so I swore that I would never go to the top of Ben Nevis, well, until perhaps a special birthday or something. And so my friend Jean and I decided that we'd have a nice train ride to the seaside, to a place whose name I've forgotten, and have a nice day and have a nice meal, you know, and sit in a pub and all this sort of thing. We'd have a lovely time whilst they all went up Ben Nevis, and then we'd come back again, and then we'd all drive back again home on the Sunday, I think it was. Anyway, because the conditions were so bad at the top of Ben Nevis, with snow and ice and cloud and so on, it wasn't possible for the group to go up to the top of Ben Nevis. So the suggestion was made that we come home a day early, that we come home on the Saturday, forego our final night in Fort William that we'd already paid for, and come back down again. So we had a so-called democratic vote, and the agreement was that we came home on the Saturday. And I have to say, I was really annoyed. I was really disappointed that I didn't. Mallaig, that's right, that's where we were going to go. We were going to do this lovely train ride and spend a lovely day in Mallaig and, you know, just relax and everything. And then instead of which, we just sat in the flipping minibus driving back down to Leicester. And I say I was really cross. But anyway, there we go. Never mind. That's democracy for you. So that's about the end of my talk, I think. If anybody wants an official guide to the West Highland Way, there is a very good book by Bob Aitken and Roger Smith. And there's also, I mean, all manner of sort of information and booklets and so on. This is pretty good. I can't remember where I got this, but there's a big poster. Can you see that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of information on.
Picture of the Mallaig route.
And then
that she missed. You're not listening, no?
Person, I could show you this, but Adrian compiled a photo book, A Walker's Guide. Do you get it? Adrian Walker. A Walker's Guide to the West Highland Way. So that's got more photos in and more pics of the walk. But some of them are minor in there, but more photos. Obviously, if we were in person, I'd be able to show you the book and nice things like that, where there's lots of photos all compiled together, but we're not, so I can't. So there we are.
Thank you. Thanks very, very much, Nicki. Thank you for sharing that and your anecdotes, your photos. Thank you. Ted and Janet, they said they saw a cloud inversion going up Devil's Staircase. You mean a cloud below you rather than above you?
We've got a photograph of it, Tricia, if you...
We'll just put it up.
Yeah.
So we're above the clouds there.
We're above the clouds. So we were climbing out of Glencoe from King's House.
Yeah.
And going up Devil's Staircase, and it was misty below. And then when we would get halfway up, we could see the tops of the mountains above us. And that's all the cloud in...
behind us.
Behind us, yes.
Wow.
Right.
Well, not behind, yeah, behind us, but down below. And
Wow.
we saw Buccleuch Moor, which was it was a wonderful experience actually to see that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Can you
Yes.
just put the photo up again, because we've got a full view of you now.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Great.
Yeah.
Amazing. Actually, there's an interesting comment from Eleanor and Frank, and they say, as a rule, please keep to the track when you're walking, if you can, to protect the vegetation on the edges.
Yeah.
So
I was trying to protect the
Great.
soles of my feet as well, though.
And then, yeah, Pete has asked, is anyone on here prepared to speak in support of Ben Nevis?
Tedious day of my life. Wendy, go on.
Yes, I've never done Ben Nevis, but I thoroughly enjoyed your talk, Nicki. It brought back
Thank
so
you.
many memories.
Okay.
When you went to the beech tree, did you happen to look at the menu?
I think we did have something from there, but I haven't dug my diary out, so I'm sure. Well, I probably wrote down what I had, but is it as funny as the sign?
One of the delights on their menu was deep fried Mars bars with orange sorbet for £4.95. We didn't try it, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, Ted just wants.
It's Ted speaking. Catherine's usually with us, but she's working this morning. But
Okay.
this is speaking in support of Ben Nevis, because she
Right.
will remember that Catherine and I were on the top of Ben Nevis with a bottle of champagne on her 21st birthday.
Oh.
Not all that long ago, you know, but anyway, that's such a memory for us.
Yeah,
Celebrating.
that's nice. Happy and sad memories.
But
Yeah.
it was still boring walking up there, though. Sorry.
Can I add something about the effect of rainbows in mountains? I was walking up Shehallion many years ago, probably in the early 80s, with a group, and we got to the top of Shehallion, which is kind of west of Pitlochry, where we were staying. And on the way down, I stopped, and the sun was behind me, so I saw my shadow ahead of me, and encircling my shadow was a circular rainbow. It was incredible. Unfortunately, I didn't have a camera to hand to take a picture of it, but I thought I must be destined for great things because of that effect. That was not the case. That was not the case. But just a word in favour of whiskey. The friend who was leading us up Shehallion, he happened to have a hip flask of whiskey, and when you got to the top of this mountain, which was quite chilly, was nothing greater than a sip of whiskey from his hip flask.
I think I might have been put off by having a whiskey drinking competition with my husband, what turned out to be my husband to be, and that put me off whiskey for life, I think, actually.
Can I just say the phenomenon that Colin is talking about is called a Brocken spectre.
Oh, yes.
And we've seen several of them. They're fascinating.
Thank you very much, Nicki. That was really good. Thank you so much for.
When I did it, as you probably know, I'd had a hip replacement. And so I was doing it as a sponsored walk for Sendicow about 8 months, I think, after my hip operation. So this was our first day. We travelled with 4 people from Hinckley Ramblers. We went up by train to Glasgow and stayed 1 night in Glasgow, where we met the rest of the party. We were with HF Holidays. And here you can see the first map. So it gives you the details, and it also gives you the elevation, which is quite useful. Now, midges. Nicki was lucky she didn't have any, but we travelled in August, which of course is the very worst time for midges. It's quite interesting. I grew up in Northumberland and there were midges everywhere, but we never seemed to get bitten. I think you develop immunity, but over the years, of course, I've lost it. So this is my anti-midge preparations. I had a net, which I only wore for half a day, and then it irritated me so much I didn't use it again. But incognito insect repellent, which is brilliant. And then I've got a little bite pen, anti-bite pen. So if you do get a bite, you'd have that on and it takes the pain out of it and the swelling. And then a new thing, which had just been developed in Scotland called Smidge, which is anti-midgy cream. And Avon Skin So Soft, which I swear by. You put that on after your shower in the morning, and I didn't get a single bite on the whole trip. So there we are. That was our group at the beginning. This was our leader, Nigel, who is actually an accountant in Coventry. and he's allowed, I think, 2 weeks holiday every year, paid, to take trips in various places in the UK. So this was our group. That's one of our friends from Hinckley. That's Trevor, me, and Brian. We were the 4 from Hinckley in this group. 2 American ladies here who went with us, and a French lady, Nicole, yes. So we were quite a mixed group. And we went past the distillery, but Nigel wouldn't let us stop, which was quite a shame. But there we are. And there we're going up Conic Hill, which Nicki mentioned. One of the girls, this is Yvonne, she decided she wasn't going to go up this big hill because we were coming back the same way. So she decided she would wait at the bottom for us. And then she was very embarrassed because she saw coming towards her, coming down the hill, a group of blind people. And each of them had a guide with them. They were led by these guides, and they were all talking. They all said how much they enjoyed it. So it made Yvonne feel thoroughly ashamed of herself, and she decided she would go up, and she made it to the top, which I thought was lovely. And then in, where was this? Mackay, was it? Tom Weir's statue. Tom Weir was a famous broadcaster, and when he died, he raised a lot of money to improve the area. And that's one of our group with Tom Weir. It was in Balmaha, that's right. And here's Loch Lomond. Beautiful, beautiful views all the way along. And Nigel kept saying to us, it was quite a long day, and he kept saying, as soon as we're past this island, we're nearly there. Well, I'm sure the island moved with us because we never seemed to get any closer to the end of it. We crossed a bridge and we met a party coming the other way, and they said, when you get across the bridge, look on the right-hand side of the path. And we did, and we found this heap of slow worms. Look, there's a head there, there's a head there, a head there, and another one there. And I don't know whether they were mating or whether they were just enjoying the sunshine. I've never seen anything like it before or since. Nicki didn't mention the goats. Everywhere we went, we saw these wild goats. You smelled them before you saw them. Very, very strong smell. And they were rather shy. They kept well out of our way, but they didn't hide away from us. So it was quite interesting to see them. Yeah. Look at the magnificent horns there. 1 or 2 muddy scrambles. I told Tricia that it's an easy walk. Well, it's not too bad. There are 1 or 2 little places where you have to be careful, but beautiful scenery all the way along. And this is one of the bothies that are dotted along the path. You can stay there free. They're pretty basic. It's made of stone. I think the table in the middle is a new amenity. They didn't have them in the old days, but you could sleep on the floor and they were free of charge. This is now the bed platform where you put your sleeping bag. One of the disadvantages, of course, is that there's no toilet. There's a spade outside and you're meant to go off into the woods and dig a hole and then use the spade to fill it in. One of the big problems along this route is that there's been a lot of wild camping. And unfortunately, people who are wild camping do wild toileting as well and don't always do it wisely. And so they're stopping it now. There was a big drive to stop any wild camping. They were putting in new campsites and they were encouraging people to use the campsites because, of course, it's not good for the wildlife. And this was interesting. We did eventually get to the end of the island and we came to this. Nigel said, this is where we get the ferry. Well, there was no sign of a ferry anywhere, but he said, no, don't worry. What we have to do is haul on the rope and raise the orange ball to the top. So we did that, and lo and behold, on the other side of Loch Lomond, a ferry set sail to come and pick us up. And so the ferry was actually out of action. They had a little motorboat, and so we had to go in 3 lots, I think, but we did safely get to the other side. And we had the same performance to get back the following day. And this is the village where we were staying. Beautiful little place, Ard Louis. It's right on the edge, right on the end of Loch Lomond. And it's a very popular tourist place because we were on the opposite side of the lake to the road, but the main road runs along there, and so lots of tourists stop there, the tourist buses, etc. And this was halfway, Crean-Larrick Crossroads, and lots of information about it. All the way along, there were plenty of boards with information about the route. And we came to this place, St. Fillan, who was an Irish missionary. And then we got to the remains of the priory, and they'd actually dug up some burial slabs, but then they buried them again to preserve them. And near the priory, there's a little burn, which is a stream, and it's called a burn in Scottish vernacular. And it was the setting for Sir Walter Scott's Lady of the Lake. The stag at eve has drunk his fill when danced the moon on Monan's Rill. And apparently this burn is called Monan's Rill. And then the legend of the lost sword. Nicki mentioned Rob Roy. I don't know a great deal about Rob Roy, but the legend is that he and his men were being pursued by the English soldiers, and they threw their weapons in the lake to lighten the load, and they escaped because they'd lightened their load. But I don't know how true it is because they dredged the lake and it was never found, so we don't know. That's near the Bridge of Orkney. It had been wet. I got my raincoat on, but on the whole, we had pretty good weather when we did it. And then the last place we stayed was the HF Holidays place at, just a minute.
Okay.
Yes, Ant Shellac, near Glencoe. And this is the weather forecasting stone. I'm sure you've seen these before. If the stone's wet, it's raining. If the stone's dry, it's not raining, and so on. I've seen this in one or two HF places. It's just a bit of amusement, I think. And Glencoe Ski Resort. It's a blot on the landscape, it really is. And that's what it's called in my book, a blot on the landscape. And the Devil's Staircase, it isn't bad, Tricia, honestly. It's just a slow plod up. And it was quite amusing. On the way up, we kept seeing signs, shop, half a mile, shop, quarter of a mile. And we thought, well, there can't be a shop up here, that's ridiculous. And it was a very enterprising man who'd gone up with a tent and a car from the other side, and he'd set up a little shop selling Mars bars and all sorts of things, just a store really, but he was doing a roaring trade and you had to admire his enterprise. Kinlochleven, it's supposed to be the ugliest town in Scotland, and it's the site of the smelting place, which is now closed down, and it's been converted into a mountain climbing place with it's got ice climbs and all sorts of things. It was an aluminium plant, and I've got an interesting book which I'll show you at the end. It's called Children of the Dead End by Patrick McGill. It was famous. It was published in 1914, and it was about an itinerant who came over from Ireland, and he stayed in the bothies and he travelled around potato picking and had a very, very hard life. And he worked at Kinlochleven in the aluminium plant, and then suddenly, once the plant was built, they were all given their marching orders. They got no notice at all and they all had to leave. So a very hard life. He was one of the navvies who worked up there, and it's quite an interesting story. The Glencoe massacre, I'm sure we all know about that. Dreadful, and it was some murder with trust, which apparently is much more heinous than straightforward murder, because of course the Campbells had been treated well, hadn't they? They'd been made welcome And then suddenly the McDonald's turned on them. No, it was the other way around, wasn't it? It was the Campbells who turned on the McDonald's. Wait a minute, I've got it here. Yes, the massacre of the McDonald's in 1692. The Campbell clan had provided hospitality for 2 weeks, and then suddenly they turned on the McDonald's and murdered them. And there's actually a pub in the area that still has a sign up saying no Campbell's served here. We didn't go to it, but apparently it still exists. And there we are at the end, the Sore Feet statue by David Hammond. A lovely face he's got. And we never had sore feet the whole time. I know Nicki mentioned it, but I think with the right boots and the right gear, they're all right. Yes. Oh yes, this place is right next to Wetherspoons. So after we'd all had our photo taken, we disappeared into Wetherspoons. And then we had a long trip back to get the train from Glasgow. And that's our group. We have the customary champagne as well, which Nigel, I think, bought in Wetherspoons. But yes, it was lovely. A really, really enjoyable. And we're back.
Thank you very much, Wendy. That was lovely. Yeah, lovely.